This episode of the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast contains mature language and subject matter that might not be suitable for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. From the people who help you know your competition, IntelliCheck presents the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast. The Multi-Point Inspection Podcast brings you news and stories from the automotive world told in an informative and entertaining way. Most of us have an innate desire to do well when it comes to our vocation. We might start down a career path as young adults with our financial future in our mind's eye, as much as we can imagine it, that is. We might have different ideas about what success looks like, but usually at the very least, it entails being financially stable. We want to do well. But then there's doing good, putting something back into the world that helps others, making a difference. When we're younger, doing well and doing good seem mutually exclusive, that never the twain shall meet. But sometimes we find out that doing good is the very thing that leads us to doing well.
About 2 years ago, I realized after my grandfather passed, the second most important man in my life, that I was trying to build a business around just work hard consulting just to make money. For many years, for most of my career, I was chasing the big chair, or I was chasing a title, or I was chasing a trophy, or chasing money, or whatever the case may be. And realizing that the two most important men in my life, my grandfathers, my grandpa Chef and my grandpa Taylor, they achieved a level of success that I would model, not by chasing a title, but by basically chasing giving back to the community. Doing selfless acts, whether it's through Rotary, whether it's through community service, whether it's literally providing service or effort through the community. I am Joshua Taylor. I am the founder of Wrench Turners Online. It's a business focused on helping technicians be happier, healthier, and more productive on the shop floor. We have services, products, solutions, coaching, all revolving around helping technicians be better. We have a podcast, the Wrench Turners Podcast, splits up into whole different kinds of segments. We have coaching, we have mechanic minutes, we have one-to-one interviews with industry professionals, as well as a panel of technicians that we regularly talk about topics or relevant things that's in the industry right now that pertain to what occurs to the technicians with regards to those topics. That's 10 mil mastery. I don't know where I would be without my lads in 10 mil. We talk all the time. We have a group chat and we discuss life. We talk about shop. We talk about tools. We talk about raising young apprentices, all of the relevant stuff for mechanics. Doesn't matter whether you've been in the trade a day, a year, 10 years or more.
Joshua says that the first incarnation of his plan to give back to the community was somewhat different than the wrench turners of today.
Giving back to the community is something that I figured that I needed to do. And realizing that it's like after 20 years in automotive, starting as an apprentice, getting my license here in Canada, being a Red Seal licensed technician, being flat rate, writing service, being a fixed ops director, being a GM, what can I do after all of that experience to give back to the community that's provided me 20 years of benefit, 20 years of financial independence, 20 years of supporting my family? So the thing that I enjoyed most about my career in automotive, the two things that I enjoyed the most is A, writing service, building long-term relationships with my customers, and two, helping other technicians, whether it's apprentice or other technicians while I was on the bench. So how can I combine those two in some way? Well, coaching kind of seems to be the easy answer there, but there's a lot of coaches out there. And more importantly, technician training and coaching typically completely revolves around the technical, like how to understand this system, transmission, electrical, whatever. And there are aftermarket training programs based on like NAPA here in Canada, and ASTE has all kinds of training programs. And then in the technical manufacturer, the brand technical training have all of those trainings to help technicians understand the product better. but there isn't anybody out there focused on teaching technicians how to be a better person as a technician, be a better communicator as a technician, be a better leader as a technician. So that was kind of the idea at first. What really pivotally changed Just Work Hard Consulting into a wrench turners focused content podcast and so on and so forth is January 2022. I was doing deep dive on articles across the internet, trying to understand better the global scheme of what technicians are going through, not just my own journey and what I've journeyed through, my peers, but what is globally technicians going through. And I read an article by the CDC in America where it itemized suicides by profession. And I don't know how I came across this article, but in the article, it showed that mechanics are in the top 3 professions that commit suicide. That moment is when I realized that there's a lot of times in my career in the last 20 years, 20 plus years, where suicide, depression, anxiety, stress have dramatically affected not just me, but all of the technicians that I've been working with, working for, or been a leader of. And my first experience with that was kind of like if you picture it in a movie where someone has that memory and all of a sudden you pulls you right back to that moment in time. In my first 18 months as an apprentice, one of the most important people in my life as an apprentice at that time was another apprentice. We had an absolutely epic shop foreman, and there were 5 apprentices. And this one apprentice had everything. Like his dad owned a karting race team. He was a good looking guy, blonde hair, blue eyes, built like a brick shithouse. He had charisma, always had a new girl, like just had everything, at least from the outside. We talked, we shot the shit, we all learned the same stuff. And one Monday morning I come in to find that he'd hung himself. And it hit me hard at the time. And it's difficult to explain what it felt then. But as time progressed, you see or hear about similar things going on. You hear about technicians who you think are the happiest people, the most successful people, finding them deep in depression, overcome with anxiety, addiction occurs, and you may not know about it. And then maybe you find out that they took too many pills, or their father's revolver happened to be involved, or something like that. And I realized that a lot of that is not because we're in automotive, not because of one thing, but there's a whole host of things that happen in the shop that lead to some fairly dark stuff. And after that, I realized I need to do something about that. I need to be finding ways, whether it's content, whether it's coaching, whatever the case may be, whatever I can do to help someone who perhaps was in my shoes 20 years ago when I found that out, to help them deal with it and or be the person to help the person who's thinking about it.
I'll put my light in a bottle, something to guide your way.
According to Joshua, breaking down the numbers from that CDC report is sobering, as it drives home the fact that you or someone you know has been affected by suicide.
The numbers are pretty staggering. If you break down the numbers just specifically in that article or articles published since, 1 in 27 people in the continental US are thinking or have suicidal intentions. 1 in 200 are attempting, and 1 in 8,000 are succeeding. 8,000 sounds like a lot of people, but when you contextualize it that that's suicide, that's not a lot of people. That's not a lot of people. And when you think about that in terms of automotive, the average store in the continental US, by my research, someone can absolutely fact check me and tell me, but the average store has 13 technicians, which basically means for every 2 stores, someone's actively thinking about suicide. You think, if the average store has 13 technicians and it's 1 in 200 are trying, that means 1 in 20 stores, 1 in 15 stores is trying. That's a scary thought. And if you broaden that thought pattern out even more, it means that 1 in 15 stores So you've got 200 techs. 200 techs in all likelihood in my career. I've worked with 200 technicians in my career. I've had one known suicide I know in my career within arm's reach, as it were. You go back in your history, every technician knows somebody that has committed suicide. That is the super scary thought. And that is why wrench turners evolved and became.
There's more than one way to go home.
So Joshua had his mission. Now he just needed to figure out how to accomplish his goals in a practical manner. And that's where the Wrench Turners Wellness Survey was born.
So the next step of that process was, what do I do about it? What can I do to help? Well, first things first, we're in a content age. So I got to publish content. I just started winging content. Like, let me do research into therapy. Let me do research into this. Let me publish this. Let me publish this. Let me do research and let me publish content on therapists. Let me publish content on anxiety. Let me start doing this. And I've continued to do that since. The second portion was, well, podcasting's a thing. I've been doing video for content for ages. Let me be more specific about it. Let's figure out some kind of podcast content and start that. On top of that, I'm thankful because Sean Welsh, somewhere in there, I don't know how it came to pass, but Sean Welsh introduced me to Joe Chambers and Eric Hardegui, who was running SDL. I got into that every week, which put me in touch with a whole lot of leaders in automotive to get perspective on. I started giving my perspective in it. I met a whole lot of really great people along the way, one of them being Corey Smith. At some stage along there, Corey Smith and I had a one-to-one, and we started talking about what's next. As I've started the podcast, I'm trying to do one-to-ones with automotive leaders and other technicians. What's next? What can I do to give back? And the survey was born, the Wrench Turners Wellness Survey. And the reason why the survey was born is one of the fundamental things that everybody in automotive talks about is money. The challenge is, as technicians, we aren't taught about money, communication, negotiation, training the way many other professions are, especially when it comes to salesmanship. So the survey was born to try and remove subjectiveness, meaning emotion, from important topics to help them.
So just what kind of questions are contained in the survey, and what has Joshua been able to glean from the answers?
But on the survey, there's 3 categories. So we have basically production, we have shop life, and we have life satisfaction. So Wrench Turners is to help technicians live happier, healthier, more productive lives on the shop floor. I came up with that because that's fundamentally what I want to do. The survey helps me find production issues, find potentially income issues, and see their general mental health. Very general, but general mental health. And then I can overlay that on all of the other data points. So the first part of the survey talks about production and income. So the survey will ask things like, what was your income last year? Top line, including bonuses and things like that. And I get an answer. I also ask things like, how many average hours do you produce in a week? How many hours do you work in a week? Things like that. And as well, what level of training do they have? What level of brand training do they have? So that I can contextualize and overlay how long they've been in trade, how old they are, how much money they make the hour, so on and so forth. So the idea is long term, when I get into the 4 and 5 digits worth of technicians submitted on the survey, I can start going, a technician that works at a GM store in the state of Ohio and has been a technician for 15 years and produces this many hours should make this wage, versus someone, either a service manager, a fixed op director, or GM, saying, I'm only going to pay this. And a technician saying, I deserve this. Well, we've taken those 2 things out of that equation, because now I can go in my data sheet and hopefully long-term build a platform where it's public access in some way, shape, or form, where it's like drop downs and filter, where you can see 10 other technicians with that specific set of either skill set or training or whatever. That is the wage of that. Not a I think, not a I feel, not a I deserve. It's a that is the variance. So now we have a plus minus of 5% versus a plus minus of like 30, which is what the seemingly general thing is. So that's one part. The second part is the shop life. So I've got 20 questions based on the coaching that I did in the last year and a half, and it's evolved a little bit. of basic questions that affect the technician's day in some way, shape, or form. They could be small, they could be large, they could be vague, they could be specific. But the idea is when you have all of the technicians in the shop answer the survey, what is most important to the shop to fix? There are patterns that emerge in the shop, and it gives me a list of, say, top 3, top 5 things that the service manager should go, we need to fix that. Every shop's a little bit different, but after almost 30 stores, almost 500 technicians, the most important thing across the board isn't pay. Even though technicians will tell you the most important thing is pay, even though service managers say that the most important thing is pay, it's not. The most important thing is communication, hands down by a margin. If anybody takes anything away from the survey portion, the most important thing that you need to change in your shop to have a better running shop, from advisors to technicians to management, communication, hands down, period, end of chat. The last portion is life satisfaction. So it's a simple set of questions. They're rated 1 to 7, and they're basically saying, 1, life sucks on that question, or 7, life's awesome on that question, and it gives an average. And at the end of the 5 questions, we get a number, and it gives a scale, and based on the scale, you can get a general idea of the basic state of mind of the entire shop. Generalized, but basic understanding. What's interesting is when you start to overlay that data based on the shop life questions, you start overlay that life satisfaction to the production information. You overlay that on the income information. What you would typically think in a stereotype way isn't true. There is as many technicians making $100,000 or more a year that are exceptionally unhappy with their life as there are technicians making 50 grand a year that are exceptionally happy with life. So when you look at your shop as a leader, whether you're shop foreman, service manager, or whatever, one of the biggest things that I can say is just because someone makes a lot of money doesn't mean they're happy. And just because somebody's making a little money doesn't mean they're unhappy. What that does mean is you need to be talking 1-to-1 with your technicians as often as possible.
We'll learn about the importance of professionalism, cleanliness, being organized, and how respect equals success, after a word from our sponsor. Perception is not always reality.
And, there's this perception that the dealerships are more expensive for everything. And IntelliCheck kind of confirms that that's not the case.
IntelliCheck helps dealerships become aware of where their prices stand in regard to their competitors.
And IntelliCheck does a good job of giving us that pricing data to confirm that we're in the market.
And this allows dealerships to make their customers aware of their competitive pricing.
I placed 2 placards in the business center so they could see that while they're over there working on computers. Also placed it in our coffee area. We have a glass wall there, so when they walk in, as they're putting their creamer and sugar in their coffee, they're going to look up and see the pricing for our pricing as well as our competitors.
Introducing IntelliShare. IntelliShare contains all of IntelliCheck's promotional tools that you can use to promote your favorable prices, including Intella Ads, the printable flyers that you can show off in easel displays, Intella Media for your digital media boards, and Intella Widgets, so you can show off price comparisons on your website and even let your customers schedule from the widget.
Just having access to that data that they're able to provide gives us a good plan of how we're going to proceed.
Call 877-827-7273 or go to IntelliCheck.com to find out more about how the IntelliShare series can help you grow your business.
This is where I get a lot of heat from technicians, because service advisors are typically hired because their ability to communicate well, communicate professionally in some manner of speaking. I know service managers, fixed ops directors who hire baristas, hire people who work at Subway, hire cashiers. They hire them because their mannerisms, their charisma, their ability to communicate in a professional manner, in a polite manner, in a perky manner, that customer service voice. You can teach sales skills, right? In the service drive, you can teach scale sales. You can't teach personality. You hire for personality. you give them 90 days to see what their resilience is, because just because they're perky and they're polite and they're professional doesn't mean they can handle the pressure of sales in the service drive. But if they pass that 90 days of pressure and they're polite and they're professional and they're perky, for lack of a better word, they're going to do really well. But they can communicate for the most part. What they don't know is anything technical for the most part. And that leads to a kind of underlying arrogance I've seen in my career. The ones that don't know anything about the actual job of turning a wrench or don't respect the job of turning a wrench, those are the ones that typically harbor the most difficulty dealing with technicians. Now, when it comes to technicians, because over a period of time, I believe that education begets a bit of arrogance as well. Education and experience begets a bit of arrogance as well. You have two sides that have this arrogant wall, one saying that what you do is really easy back there. All you're doing is taking parts out, putting parts back in. The other side saying you have no idea what is involved back here. Truly, you have no idea what a true hard day's work is. And then you get this fighting, this hammering of heads. It leads to both sides not communicating well. From a technician standpoint, the onus on the technician is it doesn't matter how little technical savvy the advisor has. You should still be polite. You should still be professional. You should still be courteous. You should still present yourself in a manner just like you're talking to your mom, like talking to your grandmother. You still need to be that kind of person. It doesn't matter how ignorant or arrogant or unsuspecting or uneducated that advisor is. You still need to be the bigger person every single day. Many forget that after a short period of time. So one of the easiest fixes for a technician to make more money beyond brand training, which I preach, is being more professional. You'd be surprised at, let me reference good friend Russell Wickham. He made a post earlier on this year about being clean cut. Now, he's a military man, a lot of time spent in the military, led in the military, understands what the value of being clean cut and professional every day is. There's a lot of mechanics out there that walk into work every day, shirts untucked, buttons unbuttoned, still dirty uniform from the day before because they haven't taken to wash it or the shop hasn't washed, whatever the case may be. They're disheveled, hair's a mess, beard's a mess, they have a big scraggly beard, nothing's organized, their tools are a mess, and they still expect respect from the service drive. I'm sorry, folks, but if that happens to be you, you're the problem. Sorry, but not sorry. So when you present yourself in a professional manner, and this is where I start to draw the line. If you are keeping your bay tidy, if you are keeping your tools tidy, if you got your communication tight, if you're presenting yourself professionally, if you're talking professionally, and you still have arrogant, ignorant advisors, fine. Yes, it's less likely to you, but now you need to start communication to leadership saying, hey, these are the things that are happening. These are the things that I'm doing to try and improve my communication. These are the things that I'm trying to improve my professionalism, my quality control, so on and so forth. But this is the pushback I'm getting. How can I help the process so we can be more successful versus saying this advisor sucks, fire them. They should get fired. This is awful. Like that's not helpful to anybody, especially the customer that you're trying to serve. So I believe the onus is as much on the technician to be professional as it is the advisor to be respectful of the technician's experience, education, and so forth.
Joshua says that the biggest improvement with stores who have taken the survey is with cleanliness and organization of the shop, which improves morale.
So I've now done on a couple of stores, I've done 90-day and 6-month progress reports. And, this is the report that I gave you. These are the things that were the biggest concerns on there. What have you done since then? So on and so forth. The biggest one was morale. So across all of them continue to be, like I said, communication was the biggest issue in some way, shape, or form, whether it's parts, advisors, peer-to-peer, whatever the case may be. The biggest one was communication. One of the easy ones, and I think a lot of service managers put enough stock in this, is cleanliness. And almost all of the service managers or fixed ops directors that have had their store do the survey, cleanliness or organization of the shop has been on their top 5 in some way, shape, or form. All of them have done some form of major shop clean and organization. I can't put enough emphasis on how being a clean and organized shop can affect the day-to-day mental health of your shop. I can't emphasize it enough. One shop did it was a larger store. One shop did a $25,000 full store between clean, paint, tool organization, tool repair. Like just the whole idea is they basically pulled all the toolboxes out of the shop, completely destroyed the shop, as it were, left the hoist in place, cleaned everything, painted everything, put all of the tools away, got rid of all the scrap, spent about 25 grand. That's a big nut for a lot of stores. But within 90 days, they'd recovered the 25 grand and were up almost 20 grand a month in productivity, up in 90 days. So just on focusing, cleaning, organization, and tools. That's it. So you think from a morale standpoint, if you're a service manager or a fixed ops director out there listening, and you walk into one of your stores and you see old parts underneath benches, you look underneath the benches and you see a line of dust and dirt and grease and grime and ball bearings and casings underneath the benches in the corner of the wall crevice. If you get down on one knee and look underneath a toolbox and you see either parts, cardboard boxes, dirt, coolant bins that haven't been used in ages and are full of coolant still and hidden behind things, you see dirt smudges on the wall, fix that. For a lot of stores, that's a pretty easy fix. Pull the toolboxes and the benches away from the wall, throw the scrap out, go through each bench with the technician. It's like, why are we holding on to this? Why are we holding on to this? Is this yours? Is this your tool? Is this a special tool? And when you pull the benches and the toolbox away from the wall, clean. Even if you have to pay somebody come in with a hardcore pressure washer or a heated pressure washer, clean the walls, clean the floor, get it back to concrete. If you can afford it, get some paint or epoxy on the floor, because personal opinion, a painted floor, especially with the right kind of epoxy, and everybody has their own opinion on what is the right kind of epoxy or what texture or whatever, but a painted floor changes so much. It no longer looks like it's just a shop on concrete. It now looks like it's a shop being taken care of. Now, a lot of the shops being built today have either tiled floor, they have in-ground this, and close friend of mine, Zach Perkel's got a Kia store being built, and I know it's going to look like the most state-of-the-art, amazing thing, and it's a Kia store. We're not talking about premium or luxury, man. It's a Kia store. He's going to make sure it looks beautiful, but it means that hiring technicians to fill that store is going to be super easy.
And being self-aware of where you spend your mental energy is a must.
Jordan Peterson says, if your life is in disarray, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you're stressed, look at your bedroom. If your bed's unmade, your floor is the low shelf, the cabinet on the far side is your dirty laundry hamper instead of having a hamper. You've got stuff everywhere. Start first with your room. Make your bed. And I think that applies to a lot of things. I think if you walk into a shop that is clean and organized, you're walking into a shop that has a leader that cares about productivity, that cares about the shop, that cares about the team in the shop, because they want to make sure they're providing an environment for their team to succeed. And one of the things that unorganized and dirty spaces do is they create mental fatigue. I try to teach this to young mechanics, especially who ask me for advice on trying to find a new shop to work for, because maybe they've been wronged by the leader that's there. Is your bay organized? No. Is your tools organized? Well, I've got them in tool drawers. Well, are they organized? Are they neat in the drawer? No. Do that first. Okay, I've been doing that. How's your productivity? Well, I made my time this week. Was it the leader that did that, or was that you? Right? Being fatigued mentally by disarray, disorganized, dirty is a thing. There's a lot of influencer content about, what does Jeff Bezos do and what does Zuckerberg do? And it's like, some of the principles that they use are true. Mental fatigue, decision fatigue exists. So if you walk into your closet and you have 18 different outfits that you can choose from every day, you're now spending mental energy on choosing an outfit for the day versus spending mental energy on doing the work task that you have to do next. So when you walk into work and the first thing you see is the tools you didn't put away yesterday, didn't clean up the spill on your floor, didn't put away the garbage from yesterday, you are mentally using energy on stuff that doesn't make you productive. It hampers your ability to deal with other people. It hampers your energy levels to deal with difficult situations or challenging diagnostics. If you are clean and organized, you don't have to think about being clean and organized. You can just think about the thing you should be doing, which is fixing the car. I think one of the biggest things, and maybe this is a male thing, I don't know, but in the shop, and I think in my own life, the correlation between respect and success exists. If you don't respect yourself, the likelihood that anybody else around you is going to respect you is slim. And you can show respect for yourself by being professional, polite, clean, organized, all of those things. I think that the current vernacular is vibes. When you give off good vibes, people want to be around you, people want to help you. All of these things that beget success in your life, especially as a mechanic. When you emanate that, you become a magnet. I close out my podcast every time with negative pushes, positive pulls, and always clean your toys before you put them away. I think that phrase is so important for mechanics everywhere because it's true. Negative literally pushes people away, whether it's your lack of respect for yourself, lack of respect for your tools or the shop tools, lack of your respect for your bay, lack of respect for the advisors, lack of respect for your peers, whatever the case may be. Negative pushes people away. It also means that you're pushing money away. If you're looking at your paycheck every week, it's like, why am I not making 40 hours? Why am I not making 50 hours? Why is that guy making 50 hours? Why are you worrying about them? What are you doing? What is your current vibes? Like, are you respecting yourself? Are you respecting your team? And when you start to realize, like many things, like I mentioned, Russell Wickham, clean cut, you put that respect into yourself, into your workmanship, into how you treat your day, productivity, health, and so on and so forth. Things start to come to you. Right? Even if you just put that energy out in the world, it's like, okay, I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be a better man. I'm going to be a better husband, or I'm going to be a better friend. I'm going to be a better mechanic. Stuff just starts to happen. Like it's insane to me that I made a physical choice January of last year to try and help technicians be happier, healthier, more productive. And somehow I found a new group of people that I've, after almost 2 years now, started to call basically family on SDL. I've got a group of mechanics that I trust with intimate parts of my life. I've got a gathering community of people that share the same growth mindset, the same helpful nature to our industry. And it's literally on a decision that I want to be helpful to the community. Just to double down on the importance of self-reflection, whether you're an advisor, you're a leader, you're a technician, I say it often, and those who don't want to hear it will hate, and those that realize it's the most important thing will say thank you. But 90% of the time, most technicians can go from a low income to a high income simply by being self-reflective. And you guys can, anybody that listening, I put all of the Coaches Corners episodes for the Wrench Nerdist podcast in a playlist. You can go on Spotify, you can listen to them all. 16 episodes, like 4.5 hours. And I'm going to summarize in the 3 most important things from that. This applies to any position in automotive. I think it probably applies to just about anybody anywhere. You can correct almost anything by journaling and a whiteboard. And to simplify that even more for you, so by being self-reflective, you can figure out what is the one thing today that I'm doing that is the most negative that I should be doing? I should either thinking positively about it or change it into a positive. Think about that for a second. So what is one thing that you want to change? And let's say it's your productivity, or let's say it's whatever. Dive deep into that and find the thing that you can change. Use the whiteboard, whiteboard and a grease marker, and put it on the top of your bench or on the top of your toolbox. And every time that negative thing occurs, put a counter mark on that grease board, and do that all day, every day for 7 days straight. And at the end of the 7 days, put a number in the bottom right corner of how many times it occurred. And then next week, do exactly the same thing, but try and beat the number by going down. Remove the negative. One of the big things about coaching isn't necessarily adding positive, but by removing negative, positive just comes. Like I said, negative pushes, positive pulls. Remove the negative. So by using that counter, do it week over week over week until you get it to 0, and then see how that affects. Journaling comes into, at the end of the week, write the number in your journal. Remember, put whatever it is that you're trying to correct negatively as your title on the journal page. And at the end of the week, put the number at the end of the week and track it as you go through. And at the end of the week, also put in something great that happened that week and keep going. So at the end of, say it happens 50 times a week right now, and it takes you 10 weeks to get it down to, say, 10 a week from 50. Now, that's a really big jump from 50 negative things of that a week to 10. So you're already more successful because you're removing a negative from your life. But now you have 10 things that happened that was positive every week for the last 10 weeks. And you're looking at it, it's like, this positive stuff is happening, and I'm removing negative. So I think Andy Frisella says it well, is stack wins. Now you're stacking wins and you're removing the negative. We're not talking about technical training. We're not talking about something difficult. We're talking about something negative that occurs every day that you're in control of. And then the journaling is the big one, long term. It doesn't matter what you're applying the negative counter to or the positive counter to that you want to do more of, or the journaling. The journaling allows you to review days, weeks, months, years on the stuff that you're trying to correct for yourself. So now you know actively that you're trying to better yourself, better your surrounding, better your income, better your productivity, so on and so forth. The next step on that part of that coaching is, okay, these are technically goals that you've been setting yourself. Most people that come into my coaching have never set a goal for themselves. They talk about it, but they never write it. Now, if you've been doing the grease board and the journaling every day, you've literally been setting yourself goals and achieving it over time. I did that. It wasn't the service manager paid me more money, or I demand more money, or the service advisors suck, or whatever. These are the things that I can control. These are the things that I'm winning at, and do that over time. Do enough over the long enough time, success happens, right? I think that Tony Robbins said, if you were in the stock market for the last 20 years, but you weren't in the stock market for 7 of the most important days, you actually still lost money. 7 days in 20 years. Show up every single day. That's what the grease board and the journal does. I think that's the most important part of coaching. Everything else is like I've been called a therapist in coaching, because I listen. And I think that's the flip side of the communication, right? Technicians can learn to communicate, but if they're talking to a concrete wall and their service manager, or talking to a concrete wall as a service advisor, they're not going to get anywhere. And that's why high value leaders are so important. 80-20 rule exists. 80% of leaders out there are managers, not leaders. And the 20% that are leaders out there, they may be decent leaders, they may be capable leaders, but they're not a high value leader. Probably closer to 5% of the 100% that are out there. And unfortunately, there's a lot of mechanics out there with a lot of bad experiences that might even give shops 2 to 2.5 to 3 years of their time to try and figure stuff out, to see if it works for them, see if the leader is good. And they're jumping ship. Right now, the statistics is 18 to 24 months. The average mechanics jumping ship. And statistically speaking, you can bring all the HR stuff up as they usually leave because of a manager. Well, use the 80-20 rule for a second. If a technician's jumping shop every 2 years, and they jump 4 times, which is 8 years, and on the 5th time, they get a great leader, awesome. But that's not how statistics works. It's 80-20 rule every time they make a move. So there are technicians out there that move every 2 years and never get the opportunity to work with a high value leader. Use the 80-20 rule and the jumping 4 times. What's the likelihood that any individual does the same job for 8 years and never has a good leader that they're going to continue in the industry? 0. That's basically where we're at. And I think, amongst other challenges, because I think we're not just in a technician shortage, we're in an apprentice shortage. But when we have a severe lack of quality leadership, people are abandoning their post because they're not getting the kind of leadership they need to stay.
I'd like to thank Joshua Taylor with Wrench Turners Online for an amazing and insightful interview. You can find the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps with the algorithm thingy. Executive producers for the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast are Melissa Marlatt and Joe Gibson. It is written, produced, and narrated by me, Brandon Barnett. This episode's featured music is More Than One Way to Go Home by Amherst.
There's more than one way to go home. If the moon gives up rising, the sun stops it shining, you know you've got a hand to hold. As we wait on the timing, together we're finding there's more than one way to go home. Yeah, there's more than one way to go home.
If you or someone you know needs help, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255.